Hey all, it's Bill from Workify Everything, and today I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to make a cheap dice tray out of some easy to find materials to sort of wrangle your dice. It's pretty easy to do. It's not very hard. Just takes a little time, patience, and making sure that you measure twice and cut once. So here I have what is a dice tray from a place called Home Goods. It's just a bamboo tray that is about 2 inches deep, and the entire idea of it is just to make sure that it's tall enough to keep your dice from flying out. Got a random piece of paper here so that way I can sort of make a rough idea of what the area of this box is without committing to cutting anything to make sure that it fits. Got a piece of foam here. It's about 3 millimeters thick. And we got a piece of felt to sort of make it look nice. Need a cutting edge, whether it be X-Acto, razor, anything. A piece of 100 grit sandpaper because we're going to need to actually rough up the bottom of this thing in order to adhere the foam to it. Marker, pencil, white glue, just normal Elmer's or PVA glue. Nothing too fancy. You can go for something a little nicer, like probably epoxy or whatever, but this has a good work time, and it'll usually keep everything inside as long as you rough up the bottom properly, as well as it adheres to the felt well and doesn't actually go through it unless you overdo it. And I got straight edge, so that way we can both measure and cut straight. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the pencil and straight edge. I'm going to mark out the area of the bottom on here, so that way we can get our initial cut in and make sure that it fits properly, and then we'll use that as a template for these two things in order to make sure that we get a proper fitting bottom. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to measure in millimeters because the metric system is a little easier to work with. It's not necessarily as interpretive as standard. There's less possibility of getting wrong. So this is about 14.4 centimeters by 21.9, almost 22. So we'll do 14.5 by 22, and we'll see if that fits properly. And if we have any issues, we'll just cut down the piece that we make in order to make sure that it fits properly, and then once that's done, as long as it fits properly, we'll trace it in to the foam and the felt. So using the flat area here, because theoretically this edge piece should be cut straight, I'm going to do 14.5 right here. Then we'll do 22 here. And then we'll do 22 here. And connecting these two. We can then measure our 14.5 from the edge down this line, and this should come out fairly squared up. Now I am using an old instruction booklet piece because it was the quickest piece of paper I could find, as well as I was going to recycle it anyway, so I don't feel like I want to use, a piece of printer paper when I know I can just use something that's already printed on and is going to be recycled anyway. So what I did was I just took my my sharp edge and I just went right down the line that I just put on this piece of paper, because theoretically, hopefully, it should be correct. Go down the straight line here. Remember, always make sure before you commit to that cut theoretically this should fit. But then again, I also added like a millimeter. So it is a little tight. It's a lot tighter than I thought it would be. Alright. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it till it fits. So as long as you get basically two sides lined up and flat, you should be able to lay other areas flat and press them into corners. So that way whatever's causing it to buckle, you should be able to press it down, fold it, so that way you can see how much you're off by. So if you can see it, I'm actually using the straight edge here to kind of press this on and figure out how badly it's off. And what I'm going to do is, because I'm feeling a little crazy, I'm actually going to use the straight edge on this, right inside here. I'm just going to cut it to fit. Because theoretically this should fit just the way it is. Theoretically. Okay. Just need to pop it out here. Now, it may not be perfect, but as long as you get it good enough with no significant gaps, the felt that you're going to put in here on top of the piece of foam, you can make it so that way you use the straight edge to kind of press it in the same way that I did with this piece of paper. So this fits good enough. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace it onto the piece of foam. And we should get something that fits rather nice. Alright, so I'm going to take a Sharpie. Trace it on. Whoops. That's why we use scrap. Alright, so you could actually see it on the screen better than I can see it. But for this next part, you're going to want to cut on the inside of this line. Not in the middle of it, not on the outside, because where you traced, that's where it fits exactly. So you want to get good line up. Now with thick foam like this, you don't want to just jab it in there and drag it. You want to cut it slow, because you'll end up ripping it if for some reason your blade isn't sharp enough, or if you go too fast. Just like multiple thin coats, multiple passes, that's what you want. Trying to keep it straight, because you could taper the edge and then it just won't fit. You might get a little bit of dragging or like random little rips, but hopefully you won't. But it's not the end of the world if you do. Just make sure you kind of mitigate them, because once the foam goes in, it should cover up all the rough edges, as long as you are very careful with how you line up everything. Tie it up twice. Let's see what we get. Because really, I don't have another piece of foam to do this over again, but because the foam is getting covered up, I probably could reuse this L shape that I'm making and make 2 separate pieces to fit the area. But I would rather just keep it one, because even though you glue the foam to it, sometimes you can see seams that are underneath the felt. All right. So there's a little nubbin, but we'll see how it fits. So once it's pushed down, it will fit just fine. Problem is trying to get it back up again. Don't do full send. So just pulling up from the corner here. All right. So now we know the foam's gonna fit. We have to kind of roughen it up. The bamboo itself is fairly rough, but I just want to make sure that anything that's on this right now, that I just kind of scuff it a little more. So hopefully the glue will just adhere a little bit better. So you don't have to go crazy here. You just give it a few passes. If this was regular wood, you'd probably want to do a lot more, but the bamboo itself is usually fairly granular. There won't be too much of an issue really keeping this on. Just make sure that you can visually see, like, it looks rougher, because you want to make sure that there's some sort of tooth more than just what already exists there. Alright. So I'm going to take the white glue. I'm not even going to use the nozzle. I'm just going to plop it in. Now you want to make sure you spread it. So they're going to get a little filthy. Actually, you know what? We will cut the foam first before we get our hands filthy, and then we have to go wash, and unnecessary. All right, so we're lucky enough that this will fit. If I thought ahead, I could probably have used that foam twice. But, c'est la vie. So we line up 2 corners. We use the marker. Go this way. There is a rough edge on the bottom side here that I would rather not use for tracing. All right, same as before, you want to cut on the inside line. You can actually make this one a little more lenient, because as long as you don't do too much, you could still shove some of this material down the side, as long as the foam isn't too tightly fit. You have to be careful with that, though, because as you're shoving things down, it has the tendency to the friction to pull it back up. So if you do it, just do it very slowly. I'm going to try to cut as close as possible to the inner part of the line here. Again, this is fabric, so multiple light passes. You could use scissors too, but this is my preferred method. I feel as though this will give me a straighter cut than, say, going in scissors and there's a possibility of the fabric shifting. fabric. I did actually end up getting a slightly thicker felt for this. Thicker than I usually end up buying, but this is the color that I wanted, which is a purple. So for us, we theoretically can't see it, but we know we're cutting something. Alright, so that's good. Get the end bit here. Now this is normal for felt. You'll actually get a little pull out. But just make sure you're cutting on the same side. Because let's say one side is cut and the other one, it was cut on the flip side of it. One of them will probably end up showing the sort of pulling that's happened on the fabric. And if you want a nice clean line on it, you probably want to stay on the same side for both cuts. This is a thicker material, which means it'll probably give a good amount of sound deadening. Because when you roll dice on a piece of wood, it tends to be rather loud. Just to give a quick example, grab 3d6 here. Like, that's annoying. It's kind of gritting. Usually when it smacks along the side or something like that, I mean, whatever, but the initial smacking on the wood is a little... So, we'll check this right here. Alright, so we'll do... Yeah, I think we'll be good. We'll be good. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sacrifice one of my hands, put some of this glue down, and spread it out. You don't have to be too crazy with it, but you want to make sure that it's not completely globbed somewhere, because otherwise it'll just take forever to dry, and or it could possibly even warp some of the wood because there's just too much moisture in one area. You also want to make sure you don't get it too far up the sides, because that'll just affect the overall look of it. Should get in those corners. Again, this is PVA glue, you know, normal white Elmer's glue. So nothing to worry about in terms of toxicity. Just you know, it's just craft glue. So yeah, one of the first times I made one of these things, it was actually for my current girlfriend. I found a stash box on Amazon, and I knew that she really loved dice. She still does. I mean, she owns like over 130 polyhedral sets. She organizes them by color. So yeah, I sort of took that as my inspiration. So I got her stash box from Amazon, similar bamboo-y kind of stuff. And I was like, well, what can I do to this thing to you know, make it look nicer? And I drilled some holes in it, put some actual like handles on the side of it. And for the like rolling area of the stash box, the topper that you usually flip over, I padded it just like this with something a little thinner, but still. And she loved it. All right, so felt, the foam's down. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the felt. So, I mean, the hand's already gluey, so I'll just get it off there. Put a little more down. You don't necessarily have to. You don't have to scratch this one up because really, if you scratch the foam up, it's just going to destroy it. It'll end up just kind of, you know, tearing. It's not like wood, and you don't want that because it won't provide a good surface for the felt to try to adhere to. I've heard people use fabric glue for this as well, but adhesive's adhesive. Just as long as you're not like trying to physically rip up the felt, you should be fine. Again, this you want to spread out, and you want to be a little more evenly spread out with it, because you have the possibility of having that felt soak up this and then give it like these hard spots, which really it sort of detracts from it. And I would try not to. Like, if I honestly feel like this is too much glue, which it might be, I will go back in here with like a piece of I'll go grab a piece of towel, and I will just go try to sop a little bit of it up. It's not looking too bad anymore now that I've kind of spread it out. Now I'd probably let this dry, I'd say overnight, just to make sure before you start rolling anything on it. Of course, I will do a test roll after I'm done here because I want you to hear the difference. It's usually fairly significant. This is actually a thicker foam than I usually use, so it's probably even quieter, except until it hits the side, which, what are you going to do? Alright, now, which side did this foam? Okay, I cut on this side, so opposite the side that you cut, you put it down. Now, as long as you don't flip it, there shouldn't be much issue putting it in terms of getting the glue anywhere. Because as soon as you accidentally flip it over, disaster. Like, it's just gonna, the glue is just gonna get everywhere. You're gonna have like, you're gonna have these weird crusties on your felt, and it's just not gonna look good. Now, it's fairly flat. I'm going to take this. It's very thin, okay? It's thin, it's just straight edge. And I'm going to slightly tuck these edges. Don't want to go all the way down, because what happens if you go all the way down into this, you'll pull it back up and everything will pop back out and you'll get glue everywhere. You just want to get the side to go slightly in there, and then when it's dry, it'll just stay. So I don't know if you can see, it looks like as I push it in, the corners may stay up a little bit, but I mean, like, it's handcrafted. Like, the hardest part are the corners, which you could probably go in there with the X-Acto blade, but you have the risk of stabbing the felt and fabric or anything else that's in there. I might do it, but right now this is looking pretty good as is. Yeah, this corner I may do that on. So this corner here is being a little bit of a pain. So I'll take it. You don't stab too hard, because it'll pull it all back out. So you just want to kind of tuck that corner in there. It's good. It's good. This might be the corner I had a little bit of a nibbit on it, but it's in there now. Got a little bit of felt left over. Get out of here. And there you go. And that's pretty much it. Super simple. Pretty cheap. I think the tag's on, yeah, like, so like The box itself is $4.99. The piece of foam was probably like $2. The felt itself was, I think, $1.50 USD. So you're looking at under $10. You probably have white glue sitting around somewhere, and because you're a hobbyist, you probably have, you know, markers, straight edge, etc. And you definitely have a piece of paper laying around somewhere. So, again, some dice. Remember what it sounded like before? So much better. So yeah, I encourage you guys to do this, because one of the things I hate is either losing dice because they got lost on the table, or chasing them down, or some of the things like some of the GW Realmscape things. Like I have the City, which is a series of 2x2 tiles, but rolling anything on them is just a giant racket. So if you don't have a dice tray of any kind, just go get yourself one of these boxes or something similar. Target has them sometimes, you know, like the hexagons or the octagons. Just get yourself a piece of felt, some foam of, you know, preferably bigger than 1 millimeter, just something that'll suck up some of that noise. Cut it to shape, you know, use some sort of template, make your own, make sure it all fits, transfer it all to the felt and foam, and put it in. So, hope you all get some use out of this. Take care.